The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Spence.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the motion moved by the member for Barker. The member never fails to bring about a lively debate during private members' business. As we've come to know, it's all bark and no bite from him at times. Yet we can still reach across the chamber and agree on a number of things across a number of policy areas. In fact, it would be quite easy to agree with the statement in the member for Barker's motion, which acknowledges the vital role the Australian trucking industry plays in the transportation of goods along the supply chain. If this was ever a surprise to anyone, the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic certainly put an end to anyone's misgivings about the importance of our trucking industry and freight more generally. Road transport keeps Australia moving. The industry generated a whopping $31.1 billion to our economy in the 12 months prior to June 2022. And it's an industry that has been growing year by year in both what it generates for our economy but also by way of tonne kilometres travelled across Australia. As the member for Barker, and indeed anyone that knows me well enough, would know my background as a proud member and senior official of the Transport Workers Union. On top of that, more than 5 years driving the cash and transit industry. So whilst the road user charge is indeed ranked amongst issues faced by those in the industry, I'm sure the member for Barker would also agree that there are issues such as the right rest stops or adequate rest stops for our truck drivers, dealing with issues around fatigue. And just to correct the record, the member for Wright made a comment earlier regarding Scott's of Mount Gambier. The company that went broke just over a week ago, that was Scott's Refrigerated. And the reason why I know that is because I've represented those workers for more than half a decade. So I know those drivers. I know those people that are inside those facilities packing out those trucks. I won't take lectures from those opposite regarding my knowledge. But before I started discussing some of those matters and trying to correct the record, I think it's worth noting that the figure I quoted earlier, $31.1 billion, in that same line, I'm aware that at the same time $33 billion was invested into our roads. I can recall the member for Barker moving a motion in this place earlier this year regarding road funding. Despite all else, he pled with this chamber to call on the government to spend 100% of what was raised by the fuel excise on roads. However, I know that the member for Barker would have been aware that the heavy vehicle road user charge is one that is set by state, territory and Commonwealth governments cooperatively. The charge is to assist with funding repairs and maintenance from wear and tear from heavy vehicles traversing our roads. As important as the job road transport does in our economy and as part of our supply chain, the fact that their use of roads will cause a need for repairs over time. And the more funding that goes into preemptive repairs rather than repairing large defects to the roads makes roads safer for all road users. Now, previous members spoke about this. 13 times more likely to die on the road as a truck driver in this country, and it's an absolute travesty. So we do need roads that are safe, that allow our freight to be delivered around this country in the safest possible way. The member for Barker should also know that the freeze of the charge in 2020-21, which was done in support of truck drivers rather than in spite of them, had some, I'd like to believe, unintended consequences. The road user charge does not directly increase the cost of diesel in the way you'd think it would, but rather it decreases the fuel tax credit a heavy vehicle user can claim. Logically, knowing this, you can see the consequences this would have on truckies, who were only moments ago jubilant to hear of a freeze being put in place. Ultimately, transport ministers in all levels of government and all political persuasions have asked for an increase to be set over a number of years in future to allow for certainty to the industry. This is an outcome that everyone from active participants to observers can see as a positive step in the right direction in the industry. And I want to close on just one final thing. This is a really important matter, and if it matters so much to the member for Barker, he would have shown some respect and stayed in this chamber till the closure of this debate. I thank the House.